When you spend time in the great outdoors, your perspective often changes. And that's certainly been true for Colorado nature photographer John Fielder. He's spent a lifetime capturing the beauty of the Rockies in thousands of remarkable photos. And along the way, he's learned from nature's timeless cycles of life, lessons he's now putting to use as a matter of necessity. Barry Peterson has his story.
The majesty of mountains, the whisper of winter, the rebirth of spring, captured by John Fielder's eyes and cameras. I first met John in 2015 at Rocky Mountain National Park for a story on CBS Sunday Morning.
Do you still come to a place like this and just take a deep breath and be a little bit in awe of all of this?
I never get tired of being in places like this. It's my medicine. I've been to the park 100 times in the last 40 years, and it gets better, actually, each time that I come here.
Years capturing Colorado in the wild.
40 years ago, all I wanted to do was one thing, and that is quit my department store job cold turkey, and with a wife, a child, and another one on the way, turn my passion, my hobby, photography, into a new career. And I pulled that off.
Sharing the wilderness with elk and foxes and one big ornery goat.
And then when I was about 18 inches away, the goat right here, he stood up on all fours as if he was going to butt me with his rack. And I, again, just kind of calmly backed up and stood still. And the goat went back down on all fours and just stared at me.
A goat who later pretty much posed right in front of his camera.
It culminated a day later in me actually communicating with the goat, with my hand on my head, laying down next to this goat 18 inches away, and asking the goat questions like, what's it like to be in the wilderness 24/7? What are girl goats like? And the funny thing is, I never got one answer, but he seemed to be enjoying the conversation.
The sound of your voice.
I think my voice was euphonic for whatever reason, and it calmed him when I was next to him.
His pictures drew thousands to the wilderness who sometimes damaged his beloved nature. But now he believes they will also help nature survive.
If you don't smell it, the smell of decaying aspen leaves in the fall, taste it, the taste of that cold, metallic, freshly melted snow water up high at 12,000 feet, if you don't listen to the hummingbirds in the meadow at 11,000 feet, you never really develop an appreciation for the sensuousness of nature and the fact that this is a 4.3 billion year process of evolution. And in our American democracy, that's why we protected more wilderness than any other country on the planet. And I want people to vote that way, and unless they care, they won't do it.
This is his memory lane, culling 200,000 negatives down to 7,000 of the best.
Good memories when you went through them?
Yes, this was my life happening all over again for the second time, going through 200,000 transparencies.
Hikes remembered, climbs remembered, screw-ups remembered, things coming at you remembered. It's all there.
It was all very humbling.
Now he faces a greater challenge than any
4 by 5 inch
he faced in nature.
I want to talk a minute about your cancer.
John has pancreatic cancer.
You have probably seen as much as any man of nature. Birth, life, death. I sometimes have the sense talking with you, John, that it informs the way that you are approaching death. It's part of life. Help me understand this.
My mind always tends to think scientifically, logically and deductively and analytically, trying to understand what's going on around me. Living in the moment sounds like a cliche, but living in the moment, living in the present is medicine for me, and it allows me to appreciate the past and the future, but by always being focused on what I've been given today, not yesterday or the day before.
What he's given today is for all of us. Those 7,000 photographs to be donated to History Colorado, where anyone can freely browse or download.
I never felt that I owned my photos. I felt that was kind of selfish, and how could anybody, kind of like white people thinking that they own a particular piece of real estate for generations to come, whereas Native Americans think they're just leaseholders, they're just there on a temporary basis. On that ridge of 12,000 feet.
When I visited John, we sat on his back patio facing the mountains.
Last night was probably the most sublime, most beautiful spring in Colorado moment I've ever seen, and it happened from my patio. And Barry, I give you full credit for the fact that you were going to come up the next day, and I wanted you to see what you were getting into and find out if you could handle the pressure of being in the most beautiful place on earth under the most beautiful condition of light, at least 24 hours after that.
I give you credit for not stopping and still photographing.
Thank you very much. There's always photos to be taken.
Couldn't resist, could you?
Never have been able to resist.
To which anyone who loves nature, who loves its beauty, who loves its changing seasons, can only say, thank you, John Fielder. For CBS Saturday Morning, Barry Peterson, Colorado.
And one really interesting thing that Barry tells us is John's hoping that his photographs can really be a benchmark for people as they move forward in looking at climate change, because he's captured these years now and people can see where we go from here and the impact that we're still having on the environment.
Over the course of his 40-year career, photographer Steve McCurry has traveled the world, documenting our shared humanity. One of his most famous photographs is from 1984, an iconic image that is recognizable to this day. We visited McCurry at his studio to talk about the highlights of his career, including his latest book, a collection of images about devotion in all its forms.
This is a record of my photographic life. I print pretty much everything I think is interesting, that's important.
You may not know his name, but chances are you've caught his eye.
Do you talk to your subjects?
If I have a translator, I do. If I don't, the best I can do is just sort of sign language and some sort of expression to try and see if they're agreeable.
Scenes captured through Steve McCurry's lens.
It's not about color. It's not about the light. It's about humanity.
Penetrating, nostalgic, haunting. Images that leave an impression.
Ah, there she is.
His most famous?
She looks defiant.
Yeah, she does, yeah.
This picture of an Afghan refugee, which made the cover of National Geographic nearly 40 years ago.
I immediately saw this one girl with these incredible eyes off in the corner, and I thought, if I make no other pictures today, that's the one I want to make.
He's made his fair share.
How many pictures have you taken over your career, would you say?
I would say more than 1 million.
Taken in more than 120 countries across 7 continents over his 50-year career.
Kashmir, Philippines, Lebanon, Turkey, Morocco.
This is half of my slide archive.
So many, they take up rows of cabinets and shelves in the rooms of his office warehouse.
We got Moscow and Madrid, Romania, Tower Records. Remember Tower Records?
Oh, yes.
He's filled the pages of devotion with his latest.
I've always been fascinated with people who are devoted to a cause or something greater than themselves. It could be a faith. It could be some kind of a spiritual practice.
McCurry's devotion came through his love of travel.
I wanted to go all over the world, see different cultures. And as I was in the middle of that, I realized I need to get an education. I need to find something to do with my life.
He studied film at Penn State until an assignment with the campus newspaper changed his trajectory.
How did you get your first break?
My first assignment was for a magazine called Philadelphia.
A dead-end job he quit after 2 years when he bought a one-way ticket to India and never looked back.
And I was just practicing, looking, observing, honing my eye, honing my skills.
He traveled through South Asia, including Pakistan, and then just before the Soviet invasion, he smuggled himself into Afghanistan.
And that was really pivotal for me because those pictures of the early days of the uprising in Afghanistan turned out to be, once the Russians invaded, my pictures ended up being published worldwide. So suddenly I went from this sort of freelance photographer with no assignments to getting published in the best magazines and newspapers in the world.
McCurry has an uncanny knack for being in the right place at the right time.
Oh man, his eyes. They stare clear through you.
A coal miner's break.
He had been underground in the mines for the entire day, maybe 10 hours. And as we were shooting him, he was smoking this cigarette, and I thought, how ironic, this guy's underground, the air quality must be terrible, and yet he's lighting up a cigarette.
Movement in a monastery.
How did you shoot it?
I think I shot maybe a half a dozen frames, and I knew the shutter speed had to be at least somewhere between a 500th and a 1,000th of a second.
And playtime in a refugee camp with a curious Afghan girl.
I didn't know that I had any kind of a picture at all until I went back 6 weeks later looking through the film. And it was one of those kind of once-in-a-lifetime where everything just kind of drops in your lap and you get this amazing picture.
Permission, he says, for every portrait is paramount, but he didn't get her name. And yet somehow, Sharbat Gula was found 17 years later, thanks to his sister, who helped her immigrate to Italy.
Did she recognize you? Did she know you? Did she remember?
I think she remembered only because it was such a strange experience. This foreigner there with a camera. She'd never been photographed, so this was like a new experience for her.
McCurry experiences the ups and downs of life through the eyes of his subjects. His viewfinder is both a gateway to the beauty and a shield against the horrors he's witnessed.
Oh, wow. Where is this?
This is in Kuwait.
Most of his work captured on the fly.
The beauty of that is just capturing life as it unfolds, capturing moments, how people relate to each other. That's my favorite kind of way to work, is just walking around and photographing life as it actually is.
It nearly cost him his life.
How many times have you defied death?
Too many. I kind of feel like I've run out of lives now. I have one.
For starters, McCurry almost drowned in India.
There's a plane crash in Yugoslavia. There was multiple times in Afghanistan.
And he was on his downtown rooftop in New York City when the towers fell on September 11th, 2001. A 2021 documentary, McCurry, The Pursuit of Color, ponders his life's mission.
This became a kind of quest for enlightenment to experience all the tones the world had to offer. I think I see in people, there's a lot of suffering, a lot of pain in the world. I think we've all experienced that in our own lives. I want to get down to the depths of their humanity. I think that's what I really am striving for.
Connection.
Connection, showing that regardless of how rich or poor they are, they have this humanity. Everybody has a story. I want to tell their story.
The stories he's told. Kudos to producer Vidya Singh for bringing this to me. This was a full circle moment because my dad would always have Nat Geo.
Right.
And I remember that cover like it was yesterday, and such a pleasure to meet him.
It's nice to hear his story from a man who has shared so many through his photographs.
Yeah.
Berlin is Germany's hip and modern capital, but it's also a city with a rich and tragic past as one of the epicenters of both World War II and the Cold War. As the years pass, the buildings that house that history are crumbling. And that's its own tragedy, according to a camera-carrying, rule-breaking amateur historian we recently met, who's taken it upon himself to capture Berlin's past before it's lost.
This is the theater.
Kieran Fahy has a habit of inviting himself to places he's not wanted and finding a way in.
Is it locked?
No, just a little stuck.
For nearly 15 years, he's been sneaking into abandoned buildings around Berlin.
This is for the lights, I guess?
Berlin, DDR, country doesn't exist anymore.
These are like living museums.
A trip with Fahy can feel like stepping out of a time machine.
Oh, we got a newspaper here.
Yeah? In Russian.
Or, a moment later, like stepping into a horror movie.
Oh boy, what's this?
The whole time, it feels like a kind of illicit race.
But we can't go in, can we not?
Oh, okay, yeah, they're all nailed shut.
We might have a way here.
Have you been caught doing this?
Yeah.
How's that go?
There was one time where the guy, I thought he was actually going to assault me. He threatened to call the police. He wanted me to delete the photos, and I refused. I would have gladly gone to prison rather than delete those photos.
Why?
Well, you're never going to get the photos back.
His photos now capture the decay of nearly 100 sites, filling the pages of 2 photography books and a website, Abandoned Berlin.
What I would suggest is we go to the swimming pool.
Okay.
This was Fahey's 8th visit to Wunsdorf, a military base where the Nazi High Command orchestrated World War II, and later 75,000 Soviets were based in an enclave known as Little Moscow.
I think the colors have faded a bit since the last time I was here.
After the Soviet Union fell, Wunsdorf was hastily abandoned, and 29 years later, it's become a time capsule.
So these signs are here, 80 years?
The Russian signs made much more hastily. The Germans printed these very nice ink on metal signs, and the Russians, it looks like with a magic marker, covered them up with the translations.
As soon as we got there, Fahey walked straight toward a glass image of a Soviet statue that he had photographed on a prior trip.
See all that glass there?
Oh, yeah.
It laid in pieces on the floor.
That someone smashed it to crap.
I think in a way that actually makes the photos more important, because they're all that's left now, that's it. A lot of places don't preserve the history. Some places have histories that people don't necessarily want to remember, like particularly stories of Jewish persecution. My idea is to take pictures to kind of preserve some memories and tell their stories.
Yeah.
So how did an Irish transplant to Berlin become an unofficial photographer of Germany's past? Kind of by accident. In 2009, Fahey's then-girlfriend happened to mention a place called Spree Park, an abandoned East German amusement park.
And told me, no, but you're not allowed to go in there because there's a sign and it says you're not allowed. And for her, this was the end of the story. But for me, it was like, I had to go in.
It was the beginning of the story.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. So you had dinosaurs all over the place, all the old roller coasters, the rides. And I actually thought it was such a shame that there was this magical place that nobody went to.
The way in changes all the time.
Berlin gave him plenty more to explore.
Yeah, we just need to be careful, that's all.
Back in 2014, for a documentary project,
Solid enough?
Not really.
I joined him at an old hospital complex called Belitz.
Whoa!
Through some dodgy tunnels and up a collapsing staircase, we finally got a glimpse of where a young Adolf Hitler had been treated during World War I.
Wow.
I think Germans secretly would just rather, nature takes over and, it's gone.
In the last 9 years, Fahey's brand of urban exploring has become more popular. Wunsdorf offers tours of the site and gave us permission to film this story here.
Here's Vladimir.
The buildings Fahey explores are generally protected by law from demolition, but with no obvious future use, many are just slowly crumbling.
It's kind of a race against time for me because I know that the places are deteriorating.
It's a point of pride that Fahey leaves every site as he found it. He disapproved of even touching the tile of a mosaic.
Pretty sure we shouldn't not touch the artworks.
But reaching into the past is only getting harder.
It's the first time I've seen it.
Even for him.
There's motion cameras now, which is stuff I didn't have to contend with before.
Yeah.
I was caught actually in one place. It was like the motion sensors. They asked me how I got in. I said, look, I came in over the fence.
You'd be an effective security consultant.
Yeah, but I'll never work for the other side. Never. Doesn't matter how much you pay me. No, I mean, this is like too much fun.
There's always too much to see.
I like that guy.
So they let us shoot there. They kick us out at 4 o'clock, and he's like, it's okay, we'll just sneak right back in. Kick us out.
It's amazing to preserve history, and I understand why some people wouldn't want to remember those moments or have that memory of it, but it's important to know the past and to have that image, to have that if these places are crumbling.
But the sheer largesse of some of these places, I don't understand why they're completely abandoned.
Well, law doesn't allow them to be demolished, and practicality doesn't allow them to have a future use, and so there they crumble.
Yeah. Wow, that's we're over top of LaGuardia. Crazy. Not a single plane.
What's even weirder is looking at the gates and they're all empty.
Yeah.
In the early spring of 2020, we tagged along with aerial photographer George Steinmetz as he captured a silent New York City at the start of the pandemic. It was a sharp contrast to his 2015 book, New York Air, one of 5 books from the award-winning photographer. This week, Steinmetz released his 6th, Feed the Planet, which focuses on the people and places powering the global food chain, one increasingly under strain from a worldwide population expected to increase by 2 billion over the next 40 years. Brooke Silva Braga takes a look.
Alexander Field, Southwood County Airport, Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin. Wind 360 at 11.
For 10 years, George Steinmetz, camera in tow, has been seeking out new perspectives on how humans feed ourselves.
This is the Dempsey farm where I was this morning, right here.
But the challenge is many of those key moments, like a sea of floating red cranberries ready for harvest here in Wisconsin, can be hard to find and last just a few hours each year.
There's some more right down there, some more marshes, but I don't see any red. No.
Then, suddenly,
How about there on the left?
Jackpot.
Yes, that's a good area right there, about our 10 o'clock.
Millions of cranberries bobbing to the surface.
This is really good.
But that's just step 1 for Steinmetz. While planes cover the big distances needed for his scouting,
taking off,
Steinmetz prefers the steady hover of a high-end drone for his final photos.
It looks kind of boring down here, but you get up and it just opens up the landscape. Big, like carpets of red. It's really beautiful.
By lingering above the scene, Steinmetz can wait for something special to happen. In this case, a flock of birds passing just below.
Via birds?
Oh, that's so great. Wow, that's such a fun accident, huh?
Yeah, you get these little serendipitous moments like that.
Cool.
The product of his decade-long pursuit of those serendipitous moments is Feed the Planet, a photographic journey to the world's food.
The most expensive food in the world is saffron.
$1,200 a pound.
Sure.
But you got to do a lot of these to get to a pound.
You take every little flower part, and they only flower like 1 week a year.
What jumps off the page isn't just the beauty and scale of our food system,
Growing lettuce in Salinas, cabbage in the Netherlands.
but the difficult questions raised by even basic choices over what we eat and drink.
You go to the Starbucks and you want the Ethiopian and the Rwandan, and it's like, would you want to have it done by machine so it's like all techno, or do you want it really old school? But is that unethical to be paying women $2 a day to do it by hand? Or in Brazil, they have a robot in there that's scanning every single bean with a laser and deciding which ones are good. It's like, these are complicated issues.
Steinmetz traveled to 36 countries and 27 states for the project.
And we got the juice covered.
And they're both the same density of birds on both sides?
Yeah.
You must be Rod.
Many farmers and ranchers welcomed him, but not all. In 2013, Steinmetz was arrested after taking these pictures of cows in Kansas. Some of the state laws banning photography of agriculture have recently been struck down as unconstitutional. But just this year, Kentucky made it illegal to photograph feedlots from the air. And being welcomed inside, that's even harder.
So I was never able to get into a slaughterhouse in the United States. And I was able to do that in Brazil and China, but I could never get in one in the U.S.
That is kind of striking. You can get in China, but not here.
Yeah.
What he found in Brazil and China is the essence of his project, the immense scale needed to feed a growing global population that increasingly has the money and desire to eat more and more meat.
How do you process 30,000 pigs in a day? And what do you do with the ears? And what do you do with the intestines? And it's an amazing operation. And I mean that sincerely. But then you look at the pictures and most people think, oh, it's disgusting. But I'm trying to be fair to the people there at the pig factory as well as to the consumer.
Would it be okay with me flying a very small drone here, like at rooftop level?
Steinmetz has been using his camera to make people more aware of the wider world for almost half a century, a path that seemed unlikely as a kid from Beverly Hills. He went to Stanford in the 1970s to study geophysics, but before he could graduate, a nagging wanderlust drew Steinmetz to Africa. He traveled across the continent for a year.
Photography is a very different thing because it was with film, and so I couldn't see what I was doing.
And there must have been a photo that you were most anxious to go home and see if it turned out.
Well, I had a lot of them, and then I remember I stayed up all night when I got home to look through all the pictures, and it was crushingly disappointing because you have all these incredible experiences you remember, and you see all these bad pictures, And I just didn't know what I was doing. But I loved the process.
The mix of that love and his newfound knowledge of Africa landed Steinmetz some paying assignments, culminating in a gig at National Geographic that came with a problem.
I proposed this big story in the Sahara, and there were no planes or helicopters to hire, and so I had to bring my own kind of aircraft.
What he came up with was a motorized paraglider. Flying it opened up new horizons.
Because you couldn't take this picture any other way. Even if you had a chopper, it would scare the camels.
Yes, there was a crash or two, but for years, the glider was Steinmetz's meal ticket, yielding him photos no one else could get. Then the drone arrived, democratizing aerial photography. And during this last decade, even Steinmetz has ditched the glider.
Brooke, the nicer way to do this is to do this in the car.
Finding he could get better photos from the safety of a warm car.
A little less sport in it, though.
A lot less sporty. It is, to be honest, when you fly it with the paraglider, you have skin in the game, and it is a lot more satisfying.
The march of technology is also one of the main themes of Feed the Planet. The robotic milking machine at Gary Kregel's Iowa dairy farm. Just miles away, real-time corn crop data in Mason Reimer's harvester.
It's telling us the amount of bushels per acre.
In the 1870s, the Gaynor cranberry farm used child labor for the harvest. Now it needs hardly any labor at all.
Less than 2% of the population involved in farming and providing our food. And so it's like 2% is feeding everybody else. And you have people who are voting, who are trying to control farmers, and they don't really know what the farmers are doing. And so it's like you got like 98 backseat drivers trying to tell a farmer what to do. And it doesn't work so well.
But maybe, Steinmetz hopes, illuminating how our food is made can help bridge that gap between those often hidden producers and our increasingly enormous appetites. For CBS Saturday Morning, Brooke Silva Braga, Clayton County, Iowa.